Okay, we are back talking the NFL. There's a lot going on in the NFL right now. The NFL draft is coming up. JSN just signed a huge deal. Travis Kelce signed a 3-year deal. That one is interesting. But I'm not going to talk about that stuff today. Today, I want to finish a thought that I had from last week that I was not able to finish because of some technical difficulties. However, today I'm dealing with some technical non-difficulties. So we can get this thought finished and out there. Basically, what this is finishing the thought on Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals and the fork in the road that this season is for them. I can see this going a few different ways, right? I could see the season going really badly, not making the playoffs. Zach Taylor gets fired, and Joe Burrow asks for a trade, possibly. I could see the Bengals making the playoffs, not winning a game. Zach Taylor still gets fired, but Joe Burrow sticks around. And then I can see this going. I can see the Bengals potentially having a really good season, making the playoffs, winning a game or two in the playoffs, or possibly go further. And no one gets fired. No one asks for a trade. And the Bengals are sitting happily going into next season. But right now, today, we are talking about that nasty, bad scenario where things just go horribly wrong and Joe Burrow asks for a trade. Zach Taylor gets fired, all that type stuff. So we're going to go over the possible teams that Joe Burrow could get traded to if it comes to that. So let's get into it. So I was in the gym the other day, and there was a woman that told her friend, she said, I wish I had some ceviche on top of some hot Cheetos. Now, the only thing I could think to myself is, wow, that sounds like it burns. Not your mouth, your ass. That sounds like it's going to burn your ass. And that's what the hot seat is. The hot seat is what Zach Taylor is sitting on. And if the Bengals do not make the playoffs, he's for sure going to get fired. And if the Bengals don't hire the right coach, which I think there's only two options, either Sean McDermott or Mike Tomlin. If they don't hire one of them two and they try to go with someone like Brian Daboll or Brian Flores or some other defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator that's supposed to be on the up and up, if they try to hire one of those guys, I think Joe Burrow is going to ask for a trade because he's not trying to sit around and figure out, are these guys the right guys for me? No, they don't have a history of winning. Brian Flores, Brian Daboll, they don't have a history of winning. Sean McDermott does. Mike Tomlin does. So I think those would be acceptable options. So if it comes down to it and they pick the wrong coach, Joe Burrow is going to ask for a trade. I think there is 100% chance that there's a 5% chance that Joe Burrow gets traded next year. Do the math on that. So I'm going to go down the list of teams. I'm going to start with the NFC teams. I think there's 4 NFC teams that there's a possibility that Joe Burrow gets traded to. I think there's 4 teams in the AFC that Joe Burrow has a possibility of getting traded to. Not all equally. Some of these teams have a better chance than others. However, these are the teams that I think Joe Burrow could be on in the year 2027. So let's get into that right now. The first team is, like, I've heard this team be mentioned before. I think it's the Los Angeles Rams. I think the Rams have a chance to acquire Joe Burrow's talents if it comes down to it. And obviously, why would all of these teams, every team in the NFL besides like 3 would want Joe Burrow on their team, but realistically, like, not every team has it. Even the teams I'm about to list don't have a great chance, but the shitty teams really don't have a chance. So you would obviously want to send Joe Burrow to a team that has a decent chance of winning, which would be the whole reason why he even asked for the trade, right? So the Rams, their reason for wanting Joe Burrow clearly is because Matt Stafford is on his way out. He's getting old. He's on the last year of his contract. And what a magnificent transition would it be to go from Matt Stafford to Joe Burrow? That's just like that's like giving Matt Stafford like dipping him in the Lazarus pit, giving him some new youth, giving him some new life. Joe Burrow is a top 5 quarterback, and he might be number 4. Number 5 might be Matt Stafford, or vice versa. You could swap them two, but you're basically getting another version of Matt Stafford. And Matt Stafford will probably retire, especially if they win the Super Bowl this year. I could see the Rams winning the Super Bowl this year. Imagine Matt Stafford retiring and then gaining Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow's in his 7th year. Let's say he has a 15-year career. That's another 8 years of Joe Burrow on your team. And he's currently under he's under contract until 2029. So that's 3 more years. That would be the 2027, 2028, 2029. You have him under contract, and then you would give him an extension as long as he can stay healthy, stays on the field, and produces. So the reasoning for the Rams to go after Joe Burrow is immense, and I think they would do it because clearly they don't care about draft picks that much. They just gave up a bunch of picks for Trent McDuffie, right? So they don't really care about draft picks that much. They just want talent on the team, and having Joe Burrow on the team would give them a chance to immediately be back in the race for a Super Bowl without having to go through a bridge quarterback or drafting a quarterback or doing anything like that. Because no team really wants to do that. Once you have a top 5, top 10 guy, you're set. Especially when he's young, you're set for 5+ years. Every franchise would love to be in that situation. And how they would do it, so I looked up every team's picks. They have all, if we're talking about the 2027, 2028, 2029 NFL drafts, the Rams have all of their picks except the 2027 third round. That's it. They gave that to the Chiefs for Trent McDuffie along with some other picks. But other than that, they can give 3 first-round picks if they want to the Bengals. And I think they'd be more than willing to do that. Their defense is set. They got a lot of young talent on the defense. If they re-sign Puka, you're giving Joe Burrow a possibly, I would say Puka's borderline top 5 receiver. And you know if Joe has good receivers on the team, he's going to produce, clearly. So give him Puka, maybe draft another receiver in the 2nd, 3rd round, develop him into a good receiver, and then you got a second guy for Joe Burrow, and then you right there in the running for a Super Bowl again. I think that one's a no-brainer. They probably have the best chance of getting Joe Burrow. Another team that I think that would be aggressive in getting Joe Burrow is the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's imagine this. Joe Burrow on the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this would be a clear upgrade from Jalen Hurts. But why would the Eagles do this? I mean, the Eagles, Howie Roseman is clearly a deal maker. He's trying to make deals all the time. And he will move off of Super Bowl winning coaches, quarterbacks, and I think that's what he would do with Jalen Hurts. He would be, if you're going to go from Jalen Hurts to Joe Burrow, I think Howie Roseman would get rid of Jalen Hurts in a heartbeat like that. And all this is assuming that Joe Burrow can stay healthy, because this is one of the biggest parts about this. If Joe Burrow can stay healthy moving forward, then almost every team in the league would give up their whole franchise basically to do this move. So if Joe Burrow can stay healthy, I think the Eagles would gladly take in Joe Burrow and move on from Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts is I'm not going to say he's a problem in the locker room, but from the things that I listen to and hear, it sounds like he's not liked that well in the locker room, which is a big deal. A lot of teams or a lot of players like A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown seemed like the problem during this past year in 2025, but clearly the Eagles don't want to get rid of him. If A.J. Brown was that big of a problem in the locker room, they would have traded him away. They would have got rid of him. But the team likes him, so they kept him. Sounds like Jalen Hurts is more of the issue. So imagine trading away Jalen Hurts and bringing in Joe Burrow. Have you ever heard a complaint about Joe Burrow? Other than being injured, other than that, if he could just keep his ass healthy, man, the Eagles would be dominant if they got Joe Burrow. So I think they also have all their firsts, all their seconds, all their thirds for the next 3 years. They'd be able to trade they could trade Jalen Hurts to the Bengals. And who knows if the Bengals would even want them, but the downside of the Bengals doing this, clearly they're losing a top 5 quarterback. But if you could bring in a quarterback who's won a Super Bowl, that would ease a little bit of the pain. That would ease a little bit of the pain with your fan base. And if the Eagles threw in here, you get Jalen Hurts and we'll throw in 2 first-round picks or a first and a second, something like that. I think that's something that you could possibly, communicate to your fan base, and that would ease a little bit of the pain of losing Joe. But I think the Eagles could be in the mix next year for that if things go bad for the Bengals next year. Another team is also the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are clearly bouncing around from quarterback to quarterback every year. Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, J.J. McCarthy, now Kyler Murray. Clearly, they are in search for a franchise guy. And no matter what happens this season, I don't care if Kyler throws for 60 touchdowns, 6,000 yards, whatever. They make it to the second, third round of playoffs. They would get rid of Kyler. They'd be like, all right, good job, Kyler. Good job. Now you can go on to your next team. You know who we're going to get? We're going to get Joe Burrow. We're going to go get Joe Burrow because we can. Because he's top 5. So that would be like 5 quarterbacks in the last 5 years. I think they would gladly do that. They would imagine Joe Burrow throwing to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson. Kevin O'Connell would be the happiest coach in the league. That'd be such an upgrade. You would instantly have the best quarterback in the NFC, definitely in your own division. I like Caleb and I like Jordan Love, but Joe Burrow, when he's healthy, he does some nasty work. Having 2 top 10 receivers, top 15 receivers, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, just like he got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. That's just like going to the NFC version of the Bengals offense. Except now you have a real chance at winning the Super Bowl and making a true playoff run because you got a good defense now. So Joe Burrow will happily go there, and they definitely be able to dominate. The Chicago Bears. This one might sound a little crazy. This might sound like fantasy land. Like, why the hell would the Bears go after Joe Burrow? Now, this is all assuming that Caleb does not really improve consistency-wise in making the easy throws. If Caleb stays inconsistent, if he stays relying on making just being an absolute playmaker at the end of games in the fourth quarter, if that's the skill, the talent that he relies on, which is a good trait to have, but if that's his reliable, if that's the thing that he's going to rely on to win games, Ben Johnson isn't going to want to keep that around. That's not something that's damn near asking for anxiety every goddamn game, and Ben Johnson ain't gonna be there for that. high blood pressure. Ben Johnson go be stressed. He gonna have gray hair by the time how old is he? He's like late. What is he like? Late 30s, early 40s, something like that. In 5 years, bro, he's gonna be bald. He gonna be a bald man in 5 years if that's how Caleb is gonna be playing for him. And if you can get Joe Burrow, someone who's very accurate, is a lot more consistent, then Ben Johnson would gladly make that move for Caleb. Although I think he likes Caleb. He's grown on Caleb through the season. But there needs to be some improvement from the first year with Ben Johnson to the second year with Ben Johnson. That's clear. They signed Tyson Badgett to like a 2-year extension last year. I think because Ben Johnson likes him. They were ready to move on from Caleb if Caleb didn't get his shit together through the year. But Caleb got a lot better throughout this past season. So, number one pick, you got to give him a chance. And he improved. He got better. And clearly that was a great decision to stick with him through the year. Got to the playoffs, won a playoff game. That's a great resume for Caleb. And then making some incredible throws on the way, obviously. So, but if the Bears trade for him, they could trade Caleb to the Bengals, and that would be an exciting thing for the Bengals. It's like, okay, we're losing Joe. However, we're gaining Caleb, who this would be a bonus of getting Caleb over Joe. I know it's only been 2 years, but Caleb doesn't get hurt. Caleb is he avoids a lot of hits. He avoids a lot of sacks. He can get out of the pocket. He can run. He can scramble. He's very athletic. And then, of course, he can just launch the ball down the field. And who else other than like maybe Justin Jefferson or JSN, maybe Puka, who else would you rather just launch the ball to down the field? Like, I know Jamar is down there somewhere. I know T is down there somewhere. That's the perfect receiver duo to just throw the ball up and just one of them gonna get it. That's tailor-made for Caleb Williams right there. So that'd be an incredible sight to see. Caleb in Cincinnati and Joe in Chicago just methodically breaking it down. Ben Johnson being his offensive genius self and just whipping some things up for Joe. I think that'd be an incredible offense to see. So that's the NFC. Those are the NFC teams that I could possibly see Joe Burrow going to in 2027. The Rams, the Eagles, the Vikings, the Bears. But what about the AFC? There's a few AFC teams. Now, I think the AFC is a less likely, as unlikely it is to begin with, that the Bengals are going to trade Joe Burrow. I think most likely they would want to send him to the NFC because you don't want to be competing with an AFC team when you get to the playoffs and then have to play Joe Burrow. You would not want to do that. So in the unlikely case that he is traded, I think these AFC teams are even more unlikely. But if the trade value is so substantial, an offer that they just could not refuse, these will be the teams that I could see Joe going to. The Denver Broncos. Clearly they are in win now mode. They just gave up. What'd they give up for Jalen Waddle? That was two. No, it was a first. It was a third. And they swapped for it. So basically a first and a third for Jalen Waddle. What do you think they would give up for Joe Burrow? What do you think Sean Payton would do for Joe Burrow? He would definitely get rid of Bo Nix. Here, I'll give you Bo Nix, and what do you want, a first, a second? Oh, go ahead. Take Bo and a first and a second. Let me get Joe. Take Bo, I get Joe. He would definitely make that trade. Now, Bo Nix is a young dude, but he's like in his own draft class. He's probably fourth or fifth in line Probably fifth, or fourth. Yeah, fourth or fifth in that draft class of be as far as like the best quarterbacks go. But he's decent. You can play with him. He can make some plays. He's been clutch in the fourth quarter. So there is that possibility that the Bengals would take him and at least see what they could do, especially if they were bringing in a new head coach next season. They would try to see what they can do with Bo. And then I don't think they would take anything less than at least one first-round pick for, even if they got Bo Nix, I don't think the Bengals would take anything less than at least one, maybe two first-round picks. And you can use that. You can use that to draft a quarterback in that season, because the 2027 NFL draft is supposed to be loaded with quarterbacks coming out of college. I mean, you have Dante Moore, Arch Manning, Jaden Maava. You got there's the dude from Washington. There's Lenore Sellers. There's quite a few quarterbacks in the 2027 draft that are going to be highly rated, and it's going to be similar to the draft that Caleb and Drake May and Jaden Daniels was in. It's going to be very similar to that draft. That's what I'm expecting. So, but the Broncos are in win now mode, and I think they would give up a lot to go get Joe if Bo Nix does not make another step. Just like Caleb, Bo needs to make another step and show that he's improving as a quarterback. This past season could have been their year to get to the Super Bowl, although I don't think they would have beat the Seahawks. But that could have been the year if he didn't get hurt. They would have definitely beat the Patriots, I believe. They would have beat the Patriots, gone to the Super Bowl, and that would have been an incredible run for Bo Nix, especially in the playoffs. He was doing well in the playoffs. During the regular season, need to step up a little bit in the playoffs, but he showed he could play. Another team that has a quarterback issue a little bit, the Houston Texans. If CJ Stroud does not get his shit together, he's not going to get extended. Or if he does get extended, he is not getting a massive deal. That's for sure. So CJ Stroud needs to show that he's taking a step back. He needs to take a step back to his first year and show that he can really throw the pill around and not throw it to the defense. So this is going to be a year for CJ Stroud to regroup and get his stuff together. And if he can't rekindle some of that magic that he had in his first season, then the Texans are going to be looking to move off him too. And then what a move would that be, to go from CJ to Joe? Because the Texans, they have a defense that can win a Super Bowl. Now, I was rooting for the Texans to go to the Super Bowl and win this past season. And they could have done it if CJ Stroud didn't turn the ball over 5 times against the Patriots. That game was close up until the end of the game, even with CJ Stroud turning the ball over 5 times. That defense was incredible. That defense was unstoppable. Now, who knows if they would have beat the Seahawks? I think it could have been possible if CJ Stroud had just played an okay game. He didn't have to be great. He didn't have to be Superman. He didn't have to do anything special. He just had to be an okay quarterback, just make easy passes, maintain possession of the ball, just kick field goals. They would have been okay if they had just made field goals in that game. But this is the year for CJ to make a comeback, and if he can't do that, then if the opportunity presents itself, they would happily move off CJ for Joe Burrow. Now, this next one is probably the least likely of least likelies of least likelies. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, this is dumb if you were to trade Joe Burrow within your own division. But I'm only throwing the Steelers in here because they clearly need a quarterback, and they don't seem like they are interested at all in just nosediving and having a terrible season and going to get a high quarterback draft pick. I don't think they are willing to do that. So they might have to give up all of their firsts, all of their seconds, all of their thirds to get Joe Burrow. I don't even know if you could do that, honestly, but they would do something like that to get Joe Burrow. And they just need a quarterback. There's really nothing else I can say on that one. It's the least likely one, but they would give up a lot to go get him. But it would look very, very dumb on the Bengals side if they traded Joe to the Steelers and the Steelers became a dominant team. I think the Bengals fans would probably just set the whole Bengals franchise on fire if that happened. So let's see if Cincinnati's willing to do it. They don't seem like a very, very intelligent organizations. So we'll see. Now the Jags are the final team on this list that I think would trade for Joe Burrow. The Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, just like CJ Stroud, just like Caleb Williams, just like Bo Nix. Trevor has another year to prove himself. Now, Liam Cohen came in, helped fix Trevor this coming year, or this past year, made him look like a competent quarterback because he was pretty underwhelming so far in his career. But I don't trust a team, a quarterback, a player and their greatness until they do it 2 years in a row or 2 years in their career. So he had a decent year this year. He had a decent year when they went to the playoffs a few years ago and they beat the Chargers in that god-awful game. So Trevor's been decent, but I think that if in the second year with Liam Cohen, if Trevor takes a step back and he doesn't live up to how he played last year, that could be another case where the Jags just decide, hey, let's move off Trevor, let's go get Joe, let's rekindle this thing, and then boom, the Jags are a dominant team in the AFC, and now they are Super Bowl caliber team. They have all their firsts, all their seconds, all their thirds. If you combine some of those draft picks with Trevor Lawrence, that could be a valuable trade suggestion for the Bengals. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking those are the teams that could possibly get Joe Burrow next year. Just envision those teams, Joe being on those teams. That would make for a very interesting scenario in 2027. Again, the AFC teams least likely, NFC teams a little bit more likely, but the AFC teams, the Broncos, the Texans, the Steelers, the Jags. Tell me what you think about these lists. I already know that a lot of people don't even think this is going to happen to begin with. But just tell me what you think about the list. Can you see Joe playing on any of these teams? What do you think these teams would give up to get Joe Burrow? Let me know what you think.